Center 3 boxes.
Here's the beans. Burger, I think, right? Yep, burger. I don't know here yet.
Center 3 box. 2 scissors. White yarn. Pine cone. Twine that's blue. Developing red pine twig. Evergreen books. Needles and scales. Cones. And a duplicate cones handout. And a cones explanation or diagram. The Fibonacci sequence diagram.
Then we're on to center 3.
Center 3.
Center 3 is kind of the most technical one for us. It talks about the Fibonacci sequence.
And even though this center is more technical, we think even the kindergartners should do this one, just because it's huge mathematical concepts and stuff like that they can understand it.
So Fibonacci was a scientist, it says there, way back in the 12th and 13th century. And he found out that nature occurs, a lot of items in nature occur by a certain sequence. And the sequence, I have this little thing that'll be laminated by next day. Fibonacci sequence. Each number in a sequence is the sum of the previous 2 numbers in the sequence. So So for example, 0 plus 1 equals 1. So then you go down, 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's very elementary, it goes
So
down.
yeah, you just take the answer of the final one and then add it.
And then I left some blanks here, and there we dry erase, so they can figure out 3 plus 5 equals 8. And then 5 plus 8 equals 13. So, and on down, and then if you have the older kids, way at the bottom, are all the numbers all the way to, it goes to infinity, of course, but you can have them get a calculator and do the summations so that, it gets it in their head. And then, part of this center is to bring in examples. So, that's on the bring-ins. So I brought in a few things. I don't have knife on the bring-ins, but if you want to bring in an apple, you should bring a knife for sure, because you have to cut open the apple to show the Fibonacci sequence. But here's a flower with 5 petals. And this one you could dissect, you could have the kids cut out or rip apart. I wouldn't go get a daisy because you'll be counting all day long and pulling off petals, and some will rip and you'll get an odd number. But pine needles come in, these ones come in groups of 3. Flowers. Oh, that one fell off. Well, there's 5 there. There's 5 there too. Doesn't even show white background. And then an apple you have to cut this away, not this away. And it'll have a star inside. A lot of kids do this in kindergarten to make little stamps. Oh, isn't that nice? So cutting board might be good too. Well, this one's going to make a liar of me. It's got 6. So, which is not a Fibonacci number. It goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to get the kids thinking about math and science and how they fit together. So you'll want to discuss that first, probably the Fibonacci numbers. And then we go through the pine cone, because a pine cone has spirals set up, and I suppose if you dissected the entire pine cone, it would have a Fibonacci number. So we're also going to talk about the closing up on this center. So we have volunteers bring in closed pine cones. Go ahead.
An excellent example of Fibonacci is actually the head of a sunflower. If you have a large one, I think it's more easily visible than pine cone.
And pine cone?
Yeah.
So if someone has, that was one of the suggestions to bring in, yes. It's a sunflower. So if you have one growing in your yard, and it'll also show the spirals. Pine cones, when they're closed, it's going to be impossible to show you, but it has spirals, and they do form tight spirals and more loose spirals. but they're pretty hard to distinguish.
So
So,
put that one hand up here so it kind of shows it.
the handout? This shows a, go ahead. So that shows a drawing of pine cone and the different spirals. And then here's a pretty good picture of it. So that shows spirals. And so what we're gonna have the kids do in this class for their, or in this center for their hands-on is we have some yarn. And they can work with probably groups of 2. Just cut a little piece of yarn and they can trace a spiral from the bottom to the top on the pine cone. And if they have lots of fingers or very good cooperators, you could have them do 2 spirals. We have 2 colors of string in here. So that covers the spirals and how that protects the seeds for dispersal from the tree.
And some of them jump, like we were trying to do some.
And look for the seeds and they can, you know, explore them. I have a whole huge bin here, and there's mostly the same kind of cones in there, but there are some different ones in there too. And then we have this cardboard box for study. These we have a sign on, do not dissect or damage the little box, because they're all pretty cool. And this big guy, of course, we only have one of him for now. Hopefully we'll get some more of those. But there's some really interesting pine cones. We tried to identify them, again, to the best of our ability.
That was fun.
Yeah. That's a Douglas fir.
And there is a Douglas fir tree at the bottom of the stairs to the right. It's this little tiny spindly tree out back. It looks like it's about to die. And
It's a
that
Charlie
is
Brown
Douglas
tree.
fir.
Pinyon pine. So there's all just different kinds of cones in here. There's mature cones, there's young cones. Blue spruce, Colorado blue spruce, you can of course talk about how that is our state tree. And if you wanted to, and you could harvest these, the blue spruce ones in your yard, you can see what those happen to do if you soak them, if they close this tight. We haven't experimented with that. But again, these are all just for looking at. And then, of course, those you can tear apart, they can look for seeds, they can have a high time with that.
And the bummer is that one unit with Fibonacci and all this, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and 15 minutes to explore these.
So,
Or 20, maybe 20. If your
Yeah.
food center's up first, 20 minutes. So that is the conclusion of my statement.